Welcome to the Randy Karraker Show on STL Sports Central, presented by DraftKings, where the crown is yours. Matthew Rocchio, Randy Karraker. It is great to have you with us. And as you can see, neither of us could get out of the driveway today. So, because we're in St. Louis, where there was a lot of snow and it's super cold, we decided, you know what, we're going to stay home and do our show from home and see how this works. Maybe this will become a permanent thing. We're getting used to hanging out at home with the weather, aren't we, Matthew?
Yeah, weather's been bad, snowed in, got the driveway cleared today, but did not want to have to do that this morning. So thank you to Dave Green and everyone who was like, hey, we have the ability to do stuff remotely at this whole setup. So let's do things remotely at this setup. So we're all from home. We're all warm. We're all safe. No one's car's in a ditch. And we still get to talk about the biggest stories from a very crowded weekend.
Cole Bassett's left foot already fired up about something that Matthew Rocchio is fired up about. He says, hit the like button. The Billikens men's basketball team are going to win 30 games this season. They're already 19-1. Of course, they're going to win 11 more games, and then a couple of how many do you? 6 in the tournament?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, first round bye.
No, I mean in the NCAA tournament.
Oh well, yeah, that too. Yeah, so round of 64, round of 32, Sweet 16, Elite 8, semifinals, championship. Yeah, so 6.
Okay, good. Yeah, so they'll get to 30 easily. How about them? How about the Billikens leading the nation in points differential? They're top 10 in shooting percentage, top 10 in three-point percentage, and Matthew, if I'm not mistaken, they're 9th right now in scoring.
Yeah, I didn't think I was going to need my KenPom stats up right now, but yeah, they're incredible. They're as of the last game they played in effective field goal percentage, they were both number 1 in defense and on offense. It's just absolutely incredible what the team's able to do. They're great offensively, they're fantastic defensively, and they just keep on rolling. And even when they have like a bad game like they did against Duquesne on Wednesday, they come out and absolutely blow the doors off St. Bonaventure, and that's why they're sitting at 24 right now in the A10. And they're still sitting effective field goal percentage number 1 in offense in the nation, number 1 in defense in the nation. Absolutely insane.
Pretty incredible. So go Billikens. We also want you to become an STL Sports Central insider, and there's a reason for that, because you get extra stuff when you're an insider. You get the chance to have more engagement with Bernie Miklas and Brendan Schaefer and Kareem Rush and more. An opportunity to go to a Blues game with Jamal Mayers. Plenty of room in that alumni box these days, I would hope. Boy, things are going bad for them. And then you get to read all of Bernie's columns during the week. Bernie is the top sports columnist in the history of St. Louis sports media, whether it be newspaper or online. So it's an opportunity to read all of his work, and you'll be supporting local independent sports media as well. Just check it out at stlsportscentral.com. We'd love to have you become one of our insiders. And Matthew, it's interesting because we think we're insiders, and we think, okay, we got a good idea. And you and I had a good idea about the Cardinals coming up with a right-handed hitter. I thought Harrison Bader would be a really good fit for the Cardinals. The Giants signed him today to a 2-year contract worth $20.5 million. Bader will play center field in San Francisco, so the Cardinals miss out on not only a guy who has improved dramatically offensively, and we know how good he is defensively, but Harrison Bader brings joy and now maturity to a locker room. And that's one of the things that Chaim Bloom was talking about, is he wanted a right-handed hitting outfielder and another player that provides an adult presence in a very young locker room. And now Bader has been to the playoffs a bunch of times. He's been around the block. He's 31 years old. I really thought that he would have been a good fit for the Cardinals. I guess not at $20.5 million. And he does get the opportunity, evidently, to play every day in San Francisco. And as good as he has become, the Cardinals aren't in a position to offer a 31-year-old the opportunity to play every day.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of people saw the clip at the fan Q&A where Chaim Bloom was asked about Bader, and he's like, "Hey, listen, we got all the irons in the fires, proverbially." I'm sure they were in on it. To your point, when you offer a guy playing time like that in a city like San Francisco, and the money that you're giving him, it's going to be kind of hard to lure him into a potential deal where he's platooning at the corner infield spots and in center field with Victor Scott II. But obviously it would have worked out great. Having a backup in case Victor Scott II can't figure out the on-base conundrum would have been nice. We talked about how we really got to see 330 from Victor Scott II to really buy into how effective he can be. And 330 on base percentage. Harrison Bader had that last year. Harrison Bader had that 2 out of his 4 full seasons here in St. Louis. He had it. It was a little bit lower in his final year here and a couple other years, but nonetheless, he gives you that on base percentage you want from a speedier guy. He gives you the defense, obviously, all over the outfield. So there's a lot of reasons why it makes sense, but at the same time, you understand why this goes pretty well for Bader on the other side.
And Erismo 2138 says they have plenty of competition at center field. Not much need to pay for a veteran center fielder. I don't think so. I think the only center fielder they have in their organization, at least in the upper levels of their organization right now, is Victor Scott. Newbar is not a guy that they like as a center fielder. You aren't playing Jordan Walker there. Nathan Church doesn't have the offense to play center field. Baez appears to profile as a corner guy. I don't really see that center fielder unless you're going to move Weatherholt out there, and they aren't. I don't see any competition for Victor Scott in center field in spring training. Do you?
No, and it's literally something we've talked about and how potentially worrisome that is, that if he can't hit the ball, or if God forbid he gets injured, which can happen, guys. Let's not forget that. Unfortunately, if that happens, they're relatively screwed at the center field position. It's not just like, well, they're kind of thin there. Let's call a spade a spade. They're screwed. And because as solid as Church will be defensively, and I have no doubt about that, the fact of the matter is, even if we're talking like a 290 OBP for Victor Scott, the stuff he puts on the base paths immediately is going to make him a more dangerous hitter in your lineup than what Church is going to bring. And so, yeah, it's a problem if it doesn't work out or he picks up an injury. And Harrison Bader would have solved that. Miguel Andujar isn't going to solve that. Now he solves another issue, which is that you could definitely use a little bit more punch if Lars Nootbaar is not healthy in left field, or if, let's talk about another young player not working out. What happens if Jordan Walker clearly doesn't work out and isn't the power hitter you need him to be, the line drive hitter we expect him to be in the right field spot? It'd be nice to have a guy like Andujar who could provide a little bit of power over in that right field spot, so you wouldn't have to, and then, I don't know, maybe it would force the hand of what we've been talking about, which is now you got to play Alec Burleson in right field. So one of the catchers has to play first base. So maybe that's what their thought process is when it comes to corner outfield power. But you can see how in a lot of ways, any of these guys can work. None of these guys are perfect. And that's the thing about the Cardinals roster. It's flawed. And so therefore one player is going to leave a gap somewhere else. Another player is going to leave a gap elsewhere as well. So it's not like they're going to completely miss out if they get Hayes or Andujar, but it definitely provides them something different than what they could have gotten with a Harrison Bader, not to mention the fan cachet and things like that.
Right. One of the things about the first half of this season, and they're going to give, as we've mentioned here a lot, Jordan Walker is going to get his opportunity over the first 3 months of the season, April, May, June, probably until the All-Star break. Another guy that this first 3.5 months will be big for is Joshua Baez, because if Walker proves that he can't be the right fielder and the bat that the Cardinals need in those first 3.5 months of the season, and if Baez performs the way at the beginning of this season that he performed last season, I could see Baez coming up and being the Cardinal right fielder, Matthew. I think that's where the Cardinals project him. He hit for power last year. He ran. I think he stole 54 bases. And I would not be surprised if the guy that the Cardinals looked at in right field after Walker was Baez. The manager loves Alec Burleson at first. Alec Burleson's playing there. I don't think he's moving at all. Nootbaar, if he's healthy, is going to get his opportunity in left. As you say, if Scott can get to a 290, 300 on base and be ascending, I think they want to give him every opportunity. But if it's not Victor Scott in center, my guess would be, because of the lack of defense for people like Nootbaar and Baez and Walker, my guess would be that Nathan Church would get an opportunity out there.
And with the Baez thing, like I think you're right, that would be the call. But then we're also talking about a guy with 271 AA at bats and 0 AAA at bats, jumping to the major league level and getting 250 at bats as the back end of the season starting right fielder. Which, listen, I'm all for playing the young guys in these situations, but it's not going to provide you any. It's most likely not going to provide you any consistency.
Yes. And that's why I said that it'll be a big first 3.5 months for Baez, just like Walker, because he would have to prove himself. One thing about Chaim Bloom, guys are going to have to perform at the minor league level. They aren't going to bring up guys anymore that haven't done it in the minor leagues and then say, okay, come on up and take your major league job. You're anointed. That's not going to happen anymore. Even a guy like Weatherholt is going to have to earn his spot with this team. And by the way, he's not moving to the outfield. We talked about this last year, and I talked about that, and I suggested that to Chaim Bloom, and I was summarily shot down. So that's not happening. So the center field job, if it's not Victor Scott, is going to be a tough one to fill for the Cardinals. Another one, and this is from our friend Samuel Howe, Karraker could bump Burley from first base if he wanted to. I don't think so. In talking to Ali over the course of a couple of days during the winter warmup, that's where he wants Burleson to be, and he thinks Burleson is fine defensively. So I don't think if anybody wanted to move Alec Burleson out of first base, they could, unless Ollie Marmol decided, okay, that person's better at first and Burleson would better serve us elsewhere. My guess would be that at the outset of the season, if Herrera is hitting, but he proves he can't catch, I'm guessing that he's starting as the DH, Matthew. I don't see another spot for him. I think the Cardinals should give him reps in the outfield and at first base. But again, they being Ollie Marmol and his coaching staff, they really like Burleson a lot at first. And that was one of the reasons that they were encouraged about being able to move Contreras, is because they wanted to give Burleson that opportunity to get at bats at first base every single day.
Mizzou 1722 asks, why do we keep wanting to sign guys when the last couple of years it has been a logjam? And it's simple. We just talked about the center field depth chart organizationally. Now let's talk about the left field depth chart organizationally. Yes, sure, Joshua Baez can be in that discussion as well, but right now it's Lars Nootbaar, and so his health is a question going into this season. So at least for the start of the season, I should say. So the question is just, why would you bring in somebody? Because they're still at a team level. I'm not, and that's why I'm not expecting Chaim Bloom to spend big money. But at a team level, Ollie Marmol still is going to want to play, some major league players across his lineup every once in a while. And so having the ability to, if Lars Nootbaar isn't able to start the season, to have an MLB level player go into left field, because early in the season, when Lars Nootbaar isn't healthy, we will most likely not have Ivan Herrera available to play left field because his whole thing's playing catcher. Down the line in like June or in like July or August, maybe Ivan Herrera is back to playing left field because the catcher thing doesn't work out and Lars Nootbaar is hurt, what have you. But until that, we know that Ivan Herrera is not going to be able to play left field. I'm still not sure if he's here how they're going to then feel about Brendan Donovan's positioning, because their whole thing last year is that he's a better hitter when he knows where he's going to play defense every game. So if JJ Weatherholt's out of second base, is the idea just Brendan Donovan is the left fielder every day if they don't trade him, or is that going to be third base and then Gorman's the DH? Like we don't have the answers to all those questions, but the bottom line is there's no potential for logjam in the outfield for this season because there's no depth in the outfield for this season.
And here's why, when the question is asked by Mizzou 1722, why do we keep wanting to sign guys? It's not that we want to, but it's something that Chaim Bloom has said he wants to do, and it's got nothing to do with logjam. Yeah. But look at this team now with the departures of Arenado and Contreras. You've got Pages behind the plate, no playoff experience. Crooks behind the plate, no playoff experience. Pozo behind the plate, no playoff experience. At third base, it's going to be Nolan Gorman or Brendan Donovan, no playoff experience. At shortstop, it's going to be Mason Wynn, no playoff experience. At second base, it's going to be most likely J.J. Weatherholt, no playoff experience. Same with Burleson, same with Nootbaar, same with Scott, same with Walker. So there's an old line in baseball that sometimes you need to have an adult in the room. And in terms of position players, the Cardinals literally don't have one. They have nobody that's been through the wars, nobody that's played in a pennant race in September. That's why they signed Ryan Stanek to do that for the bullpen guys. It's one of the reasons they signed Dustin May, because he's done it in the rotation before. And they'd like to have an adult in the room among the position players so that there can be a little bit of leadership shown. And Brad Thompson and Chris Duncan always talked about when that 06 team was getting ready to go to the World Series, and the veterans from 04 had been through the playoffs and lost, how much of a benefit it was to have people that have been through that '04 season, people like Jim Edmonds and Scott Rowland and Albert Pujols, and they were going around the clubhouse in September saying, hey, this is going to be really fast and it's going to be really intense. Slow it down, take a breath, and make sure that you're prepared every day, but don't let this get away from you because it can spin out of control in a hurry. And the Cardinals just don't have that guy to tell young players how to go about that. And eventually the Cardinals do expect to win again, and they'd like to have a little bit of experience and have these guys understand what it's like to go through it. And a veteran player, the right veteran player, can really be a huge benefit as young players try to learn how to win. I'll never forget Adam Wainwright's story. And I think it was when you and I were, when we had him on the weekly show, when he was playing, talking about Izzy and how Jason Isringhausen said, hey, if things start spinning out of control, just step off the mound, take a deep breath. Don't forget to breathe, because sometimes athletes do. And Adam said that was the best piece of advice he got. Pieces of advice are really important for pro athletes. And I think having a veteran guy that's been through the wars, whether it's Harrison Bader or somebody else, can really be a benefit to a young team.
Cole Bassett's left foot. I don't think the St. Louis Cardinals need to rely on the experienced playoff veteran now, not in a rebuild. They're not relying on this player. They're putting them in there for two roles, which is emergency backup play on the field, and Randy's point, leadership in the locker room. Because here's the thing, and listen, St. Louis fans have not had to study tanks, but being an NBA fan, I've read a lot of articles about tanking teams. And the one thing that stands out about teams that do it over and over again is that there is never, to Randy's point, there are never veterans who teach these players how to be winning professional athletes, not just winning athletes. The professional part is big. How do you conduct yourself? How you show up for meetings? How you go through scouting reports? How you work in and out every day, game to game, especially in professional baseball where there's no practice time. You just go game to game, and you have your warm-ups, and then you have the scouting reports that you're getting from all your coaches. But they're like, what is practice in Major League Baseball in a 162 game season? And so having a guy who knows how to be a professional baseball player, when it's not going to tax the salary, it's not going to tax at bats for the young players. Having winning players who can help you build a culture. In fact, we were just talking to Josh Schertz earlier today on Zoom because Slew is snowed out today. Ooh, I did not get that one out cleanly. That was a tricky one. And he had a great point today. He goes, "There's a difference between a winning culture and a culture that allows you to win." And the way he described having a culture that allows you to win, and that is that it lasts longer, and there's more to it. And I think that's what having guys who have played in the playoffs, have been on winning teams and things like that, who are here when the Cardinals were actually a winning organization, they can build a culture that eventually this team can win in. But right now, just saying, "Oh, well, we're all a bunch of young players, just throw them out there and see what have you." That isn't the worrying part to me about winning only 71 games. It's the mindset that gets into players when you win 71 games year after year after year. Having a professional in there to help them through that, especially all these young players, that's a good thing to have.
Okay, let me give you another example, because we're getting a lot of pushback on this. It's not just on the field, it's off the field. So BT makes his first trip to New York, and the bus people are pulling the bags out of the bus, and BT goes to grab his bag. And Jim Edmonds says, "What are you doing?" He says, I'm grabbing my bag." He says, "No, this is the big leagues. You don't grab your bag. They take care of your bag. You don't want to mess up your back by lifting up a bag." Teaching players how to go about getting their hotel room keys, teaching players what time the bus is and where the bus has to meet, teaching players what to do in terms of eating and timing out your day. There are so many things involved with being a Major League Baseball player that a young player doesn't really know until he gets there. And the other part of it is, we had another one that said you can wait to get the veteran until a lot later in the build. Well, what happens if unexpectedly the Cardinals are in the hunt in September? They were a couple of injuries and a bullpen away from having an exciting September last year. Their defense falls apart because Arenado and Donovan get hurt. And then they trade the bullpen, and it wasn't the September that they planned on having. But that's another great experience to go through, and it's great to have a guidepost to go through that stuff. It is a deal. It is a thing in Major League Baseball. You might not believe it, but everybody in baseball, from the highest levels, from ownership, general managers, scouting directors, players, veterans, rookies, everybody in baseball. There isn't anybody in baseball that will say, yeah, having a veteran presence isn't really important. For every person in every level of baseball, they will tell you that having a veteran presence is an important thing for every single young player if they want to advance and turn into a really good and a really accomplished major league player. There are just things that you don't know because you don't know. And a veteran player can help, or you can learn through the school of hard knocks. And I think this organization would prefer to have that veteran presence that helps young players get better and learn how to be a responsible major leaguer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's super important to instill that as you're rebuilding this team. We were talking a little bit about left field, and we have some people talking. I agree. Sajashi should be taking reps in left field. Brendan Donovan can play a good left field. But I think the thing is that, like, this move, getting this outfielder would not take up anybody else's at bats. And so that's why people being like, you don't need to make this move because you're rebuilding. I love that the fan base of this show is apparently very accepting of this team bottoming out and kind of rebuilding and not needing to win games this year. But I don't think the Cardinals have that mindset completely, which is if they can add an Andujar or a Hayes, or if they could have added a Bader, and that can help them win more games, again, without blocking anybody's at bats, then why not make that move? Why not make that add? It just makes a lot of sense, because again, if what happens, and God forbid, knock on wood, bite my tongue and all that, what happens if JJ Weatherholt just struggles all spring and they don't want, and he's not with the team out of spring? Brendan Donovan's still got to play second base. Nootbaar's not healthy enough. Who in God's name is playing left field? Sure, it's Thomas Sajaci, but Thomas Sajaci has never played an outfield inning in Major League Baseball. I got to go to his minor league stats and see, did he play any outfield in the minors at all as a fielder? He played across the minors. Let me see here. He played 0 innings in the outfield across his entire minor league career. So are you just going off Thomas Sajaci playing a bunch of left field after the work he does in spring? It's going to help you get maybe a number 1 draft pick, but it's also going to make a chunk of St. Louis fans pretty pissed off at the quality of baseball. And you still have to, steward some fans through this rebuild with some actually watchable baseball.
Yeah. And Matthew, one other point here is that the Cardinals, they have guys that they think are going to be really good. They have some guys they think are going to be good, but they have some guys that they don't have a tremendous amount of belief in. And it's my thought, and I haven't been told this definitively, but just reading between the lines, it's my thought that if they don't have Brendan Donovan or Lars Nootbaar on their team on opening day, that they'll feel that way about their left fielder, that they'll feel like that's a guy that is not potentially even a really good player. He'll be a placeholder. And I'm with everybody in saying that Sajaci deserves an opportunity to get some reps out there, but he needs to take it upon himself to get that glove and play left field. By the way, speaking of Weatherholt, the MLB Top 100, according to MLB Pipeline, came out on Friday, and JJ Weatherholt is rated the number 5 prospect in all of baseball. The Cardinals have top 100 prospects. Weatherholt 5, Liam Doyle is 34. I'd expect that we'll see him at some point during the season. Raniel Rodriguez is number 37. He's only 19 years old. We probably won't see him. Joshua Baez, we talked about earlier, he is the number 87 prospect. And Leonardo Bernal, who was the Gold Glover among catchers in all of minor league baseball. You got 150 teams, only one catcher wins the Gold Glove, and Bernal was the guy to win that Gold Glove. He's rated the number 98 prospect in all of baseball. And then you had Tink Hence and Tekoa Roby. Both of those guys were top 100 before last season, and they weren't on the list anymore because of their injuries. And then there's still 2024 Minor League Player of the Year, Jimmy Crooks, who will be in the Major League camp, and the Minor League Pitcher of the Year in 2024, Quinn Matthews. So there's still some guys, Bryson Motts, who's the 2025 Pitcher of the Year. Kids added in the Boston trades. Brandon Clark was brought in exchange for Sonny Gray. Yoker Fajardo was brought in the Wilson Contreras trade. So, Matthew, it's really cool to have, and again, we don't know how all these guys are going to work out, but you have independent evaluators suggesting that the Cardinals have 5 of the top 100 players in baseball, and that's a good thing. Are they going to work out? We don't know, but at least for me, it's exciting to see the opportunity that they might be given, and hopefully, I don't know if this is going to happen. Hopefully, people like Hentz and Roby will get healthy. Tekoa Roby was the guy that, of all those pitchers last year, even at the end of the year, and this was with Doyle up, they looked at Tekoa Roby as a big-time swing and miss guy. They're going to give him every opportunity, Matthew, when he's healthy, to make this major league team, because the Cardinals think that he can be a front-of-the-rotation starter. So keep an eye on Roby. Maybe he comes back at least at the beginning as a reliever, like Matt Morris did after his Tommy John surgery. But I will not be at all surprised to see Tekoa Roby in the next few years get a chance in the Cardinal rotation.
Yeah, I mean, I love these young pitchers. Roby's a guy who, man, if he doesn't get injured, I mean, that talk about that screwing with somebody's timeline. He's one of those guys where if he's not injured last year, it's a completely different timeline of when he hits the majors and when he impacts the Cardinals. He would have been up last year, I think.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt about it. So you've got some guys. We get Brian Torres could play left field. Well, yeah, there's a lot of, you can pull a name out of the hat to play left field. But again, I think the Cardinals, they have their guys that they like, and they have their guys that are in the organization but are just kind of people that fill roster spots right now. And they're still building the roster. So I just, number one, I believe that they really do want Lars Nootbaar to be there on opening day. But if he's not, that might be one of the reasons that a guy like Brendan Donovan is requiring the Cardinals to be overwhelmed by a trade offer. And here we are, camp starts, players report 2 weeks from tomorrow. And I'm kind of thinking now, and I know the Giants are still looking. They mentioned in the story about Bader that they're still looking for a second baseman. We know that Seattle is still looking for a second baseman. Well, we're 2 weeks away from camp. If you have not determined yet that the Cardinals are, and Donovan is worthy of the Cardinals being overwhelmed for, I don't know what's going to change in the next 2 weeks. I really don't. I kind of think that the way I'm looking at it, that Donovan is going to start spring training with the Cardinals.
Yeah, I the more and more I see, I'm with you. I shifted like last week, 2 weeks ago now. I think he's staying with the Cardinals. And I think part of it is connected to your point that they want to give Walker and they want to give Gorman probably 2 or 3 months. But if those guys don't show anything in those 2 or 3 months, they're going to full on pull the plug. And if that happens, they need a third baseman opposite JJ Weatherholt's second base, and that could be Brendan Donovan. They could need a right fielder, and that could be Joshua Baez, or because also, and when we're talking about Baez or any of these younger guys, while we're talking about Jordan Walker, can we talk about how he was definitely pushed too fast, too far, or too far, too fast, and that's certainly not something you want to do to Joshua Baez on the heels of the finality of a Walker situation. And again, listen, all the scouts are really high on Joshua Baez. That's why he's 87th in the top 100 MLB pipeline rankings. But it's always a crap shot. It doesn't matter how highly you rank the prospect is. It is always still a crap shot finally moving them to the majors. And so you have to build contingency plans. And I trust the Cardinals to build those contingency plans. And I think that's what we've seen them do with some of the young pitching this year as well, because they went out and they got guys like May, and then they talk about how they might still add another veteran pitcher. And that's probably because they don't want to have to rely on Dick Fitz taking 40 more innings on them last year and having to give them, 29 starts when his arm just can't do it. Or if Matthew Liberatore clearly needs a little bit of a rest after overtaxing his arm last year, it's nice to have plans. No one's taking those innings, but it's better to have Matthew Liberatore rest than hurt his arm.
Yeah, and going back to Baez, at least he will have played his career in the outfield by the time he gets here. And that was one of the things that was really unfair to Jordan Walker, is to have him play 55 games, whatever it was, in the outfield before he played his first major league game. He'd always been an infielder, a third baseman. And so the Cardinals decide, okay, well, after we traded Harrison Bader, ironically, we'll put him in left field for the last 2 months of the season, or right field, and we'll let him teach himself how to play the outfield. Well, as we saw, The poor guy had no clue as to how to go about the business. They gave him spring training. I would guess that, kind of like Ivan Herrera, he wasn't set up to succeed really well at the major league level, having never played a day at AAA. And I think that the Cardinals now, under this administration with Bloom and Larry Day and Rob Cerfolio, I think that this group is going to make sure that players are seasoned when they get to the major leagues. I don't think we're going to see any more of those guys that have no idea how to play the game coming to the major leagues for the Cardinals. I think those are days gone by for the Cardinals.
Enrico Palazzo, Roby, Henson, Jerpy, the new Holy Trinity. No, the Holy Trinity was a bad thing when me and Randy were talking about that with pitchers. That would be a good thing if all three of those people, I cannot believe that's a name I will never successfully remember 2 times in a row. Roby, Henson, Jerpy, if those guys all get cooking with the Cardinals, they will be a much more positive St. Louis friendly Holy Trinity.
Yeah. And so it was Casey Lawrence, Chris Vonderha. I don't even remember who the other guy was, but I've
forgotten who the third one was.
That was from the 71 win season. That was not a great bullpen. Matthew, did you happen to notice yesterday that we got our Super Bowl pairing?
Yeah. Listen, a lot better than it could have been is all I've got to say to that.
Well,
it could have been so much worse.
Okay. It very well could have been.
Not as good as it could have been. We could have completely avoided this crap and just done a replay of the least watchable Super Bowl ever. Not fun for my eyes, but I also wouldn't have to settle with either the Patriots or the Rams getting another Super Bowl. Now only a 50% chance.
Well, and Super Bowl 60 deserves a sports book built for the moment. And DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 60, puts you right in the center of the biggest game of the year. And when anything can happen during the Super Bowl, DraftKings has your back with early exit. If a player goes down in the first half, you still get paid out in cash immediately once your bet settles. No bonus bets, no waiting. And I'm looking at that over-under, the early over-under of 45.5. I think this game's going under, Matthew. I just, with as good as the defense is for New England, and I believe New England was 4th in the league in points against. Seattle was 1st in the league in points against. 45.5 for me is a pretty good number, and I think I would go with the under there. New England, like the Rams, and they didn't do it, has a tendency to take the ball away, and I just don't feel good about the matchup of the New England offense against the Seattle defense. I worry for their ability to score points. Granted, they didn't score in the second half yesterday, but they didn't score when the weather was good against Denver either. And I think Seattle's defense is every bit as good as Denver's defense. So I'm going to play the under here, at least in the early going.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I mean, these defenses are both absolutely killer. I don't know if you saw the stat, but Matthew Stafford is literally the only quarterback who's been able to break down the Seahawks defense this year. He did it multiple times, and the Rams were never enough beyond that. So, yeah, the Seahawks defense is incredible. We saw what the Patriots defense can do, even if it was against a limited Denver Broncos offensive attack. Still, that Patriots defense, we know what Mike Vrabel's all about. I'm with you on the under. I'm absolutely with you on the under.
And if you're new to DraftKings, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the code STL Sports right there on your screen. That's code STL Sports. Turn $5 into $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins in partnership with DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 plus. Physically present in Missouri. Eligibility restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets, which expire in 7 days. Additional terms at dkng.co/audio. Limited time offer.
Andy, we're getting I'm going back and forth here in the chat because still Cole Bassett's left foot and some other ones are talking about how they don't want to see any veteran outfielders get signed. Again, to your point, you're going to have to take that up with Chaim Bloom. Cleared once. My argument, they're not blocking anyone's development. They are just backups. Backups still take roster spots, and roster spots shape opportunity. If you want the kids to grow, you can't keep stocking the fridge with the same aging cuts. Here's the thing, guys. There's
Matthew, that a player that's going to get a young player that's going to get 150 at bats is not getting as nearly as much growth opportunity at the major league level as he would at AAA.
But also, like, we're talking about the future of this organization. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to anybody, but Brian Torres is about to turn 28 years old. He's on the 40-man roster. That's a roster spot that would be better served by Austin Hayes.
Yeah.
Cesar Prieto is about to turn 26. Probably a roster spot considering all the middle infield talent for this team. Probably a roster spot that could be freed up for an Andujar without many issues. Are they really going to go into the season with 5 catchers on their 40-man roster? I don't know, but you could argue that's one place to open up a spot where no one's getting minutes and no one's getting innings and no one's getting at bats. So that's 3 spots just with the hitters. I think you could open up in the 40-man. The point is, for Nick Riquette, Matt Pushard. Probably not Pushard, but Riquette. There's probably some pitchers there as well. Bottom line is you can open up 40-man spots. That is not hindering anyone's development. Joshua Baez is already on the 40-man. I mean, I guess they got to put JJ on it at some point. So there's the infielder spot in fairness. It's just there's spots open. It's easy to get a veteran on here, and it doesn't stop anybody from getting at bats because when they sign, you're telling them you're only getting at bats if.
Yeah, and again, for me, this is a very specific player that the Cardinals need to get because I think he also, in addition to being somebody who's capable of playing, I mean, Cesar Prieto is a break glass in case of emergency guy. That's why he's on the roster. If you lose both of your middle infielders, then Prieto's up and you're kind of stuck with him playing. That's one of those situations. And if you don't have Donovan, he becomes a little bit more important. But I want a player that can play a little bit, but also has that experience to help younger players through. And I just don't see that guy. If somebody can tell me who that guy on the roster is right now that is going to be a mentor for the young players, feel free to put it in the chat. I just don't see that player on this team right now that has playoff experience that can help young players through a process of a 6-month season, let alone a pennant race, because nobody expects the Cardinals to win this year. At least we don't. The players might. But you need to, if you're going to be a winning team, you need to know how to play in September, where it's a different sport altogether. Every player will ever tell you that, and every player we've ever asked on this show or any show that I've ever done says, yep, and Ollie knows it. It's a different sport in September. And to deal with it, you need to have a little guidance. That's just a fact of the matter. Every good team has had players that have taught other players how to go about winning. Even in 1982, the Cardinals brought in Gene Tennis. He'd been part of that A's dynasty in the early 70s. Now, Whitey said, hey, I'm the leader of the team. But Oberkfell hadn't been through it. Ozzie hadn't been through it. Herr hadn't been through it. Hernandez hadn't been through it. George Hendrick really had not, although he played on that A's team a little bit. Willie certainly had never been through it. Lonnie Smith had been through it with Philadelphia, but not to, well, I guess he did play in the World Series. So, but he wasn't, Lonnie wasn't the leader. He wasn't the guy that you were putting in that position to be a mentor. So that's one of the reasons that Whitey went out and got a guy like Gene Tennis. That's one of the reasons that a guy like Jim Cott stayed on the team. Same thing with Tony when he came here, right? When he brings in Eckersley and when he brings in Rick Honeycutt and Stottlemyre and Mike Gallego and Gary Gaetti, guys with winning experience. And the reason that those Hall of Fame managers like Whitey Herzog and Tony La Russa had those guys brought in is because of exactly what I'm talking about, because it was veteran winning presence. And
I love this from Mike Henson. He actually had a longer question here when he hit us up from the Facebook side, but then he was like, you know what? I'm going to go over to YouTube, condense this a little bit. So Mike, I love it. You're getting in chats on both sides. If you're watching us on the Facebook, jump in the chat onto the YouTube. It's a little bit easier, better way to watch, in my opinion, but I'm a youngin' who loves the YouTube. But here's Mike's question. Do you think DeWitt's will give the financial resources, even with salary, even if there's a salary cap, to go out and get a Paul Skeens in free agency? We've talked about this a lot, Randy, but I think kind of like the biggest contracts we've seen them hand out, the person will have to be here for at least half a season if they're going to get that kind of deal.
Well, here's the thing. The Blues, with revenue sharing and a salary cap, can spend to the cap. Now, they go about it in a different way than some teams. For example, Edmonton is giving Draisaitl and McDavid a ton of money. But if there's a salary cap, that's the wonder of having it, is it gives every team the opportunity to have that guy. It gives the Kansas City Chiefs, in a market smaller than St. Louis, the opportunity to give Patrick Mahomes $500 million. It gives the Green Bay Packers the opportunity to sign Brett Favre at one point to the highest salary in football, and Aaron Rodgers to be a top 5. And by the way, Devontae Adams was a top 5 paid receiver. That's what a salary cap does for you. It allows small and medium markets to be able to compete. Didn't Shai Gilgeous-Alexander just get a monster extension from the Oklahoma City Thunder, like a max extension from them last offseason? Because they have revenue sharing and a salary cap. You can't do that now. No, if Paul Skeens becomes a free agent and there isn't a salary cap, he's going to pitch for the Dodgers and he's going to get $500 million. He's going to get a 10-year contract at $50 million a year. The Cardinals are not going to go there without a salary cap. But yeah, it'd be foolish if you have a salary cap to not make that move on a guy like Skeens, because the way the caps are set up is that with a floor, generally the franchises have to spend about 99% to 99% of the cap over the course of 5 years. So if you're the Cardinals and you're planning on winning and Skeens is available as a free agent, absolutely the resources would be there. The Cardinals, if they can have a level playing field and have the same opportunities to go get quality players as the Dodgers and the Mets do, the Cardinals will take advantage of that opportunity. We've seen it before in the marketplace in 2000 through 2015. The Cardinals went out and they gave Matt Holliday the biggest free agent contract of the offseason in 2010. They gave Goldschmidt his 130. They traded for Arenado and his 240. They gave a fourth-year player like Albert Pujols $100 million. Yeah, if the opportunity is there, the resources will be there. There's no doubt about it.
Samuel House says the DeWitts refuse to compete in an open market. That's not true. They refuse to finish first in an open market. They finished second plenty when going after free agents. They're competing. They just refuse to finish first in the open market. Thank you very much.
Okay. And again, I think we need to look at circumstance. Okay. The Cardinals could spend every penny of their revenue on payroll. They could not pay any employees. They could not pay anything in the minor leagues. They could not pay any insurance. They could not pay any travel, any lodging for their players. They could give every penny of the revenue that they generate from national TV, local TV, and ticket sales. They could give it all to payroll, and they still couldn't pay as much as the Dodgers are paying while making a profit. So again, you can say refuse to compete. Where's the money going to come from? If you want to pay players, if you're the Cardinals and you have $357 million in revenue and you want to give $380 million or $400 million to the players, where's that other money coming from?
I'm not really sure.
I'd like to know. If that's refusing to compete, then no surviving business in America is willing to compete in an open market, right? Because there isn't a single business that is going to succeed, that is going to spend more than they take in. Not one. I don't think there's one. Maybe Live Golf is the one, but that's not in America, right? Can you think of any other business besides Live Golf that spends a lot more than they make?
Yeah, we can put an asterisk that anybody not funded by dilettante oil money usually likes to turn a profit. Yes.
Yeah.
Anyone who's not losing the money with the direct purpose of covering up murders, yes, they usually want to turn a profit. But if you got to cover up, some journalists who got chopped up, then yeah, you might want to lose some money in the deal, and it happens.
Yeah, point well taken. So I'll just wait for the chat here. I want to see what that business is. Let's see. Need to create a Cardinal cryptocurrency. There you go.
Just to rip people off. Can you say more revenue sharing? Well, I mean that would certainly be about. But the thing is that we don't know what the rev share deal is going to be. When this new deal gets figured out with the salary cap, God knows how they figure it out. And by the way, as much as the salary cap is going to be interesting to see, I don't think they can just overrule the previous McCourt deal. And that thing goes till 2039. Randy. They do not have to give the fair rev share of local TV money until the end of that deal, which is through 2039. They got 13 more years of not having to rev share the way the other big clubs do. I don't know how that gets factored into a new CBA, but something tells me we aren't going to be talking about a completely fair playing field right out of the gate.
Well, and that's where a guy like Mark Walter, the Dodgers owner, is going to have to be a hero in this scenario. And I've talked before about Wellington Mara back in 1960, the Giants owner, when the idea of revenue sharing was broached and everybody thought there's no chance that New York will share their money with Green Bay. And Wellington Mara said, yep, I'm in. Pete Rozelle suggested, he laid out a plan. He said, okay, we can have a league where everybody has a chance to win and we can all make a ton of money, but it's incumbent upon you guys to be a real league and not be out for yourselves completely. And Wellington Mara said to Rozelle, okay, I'll do it. And that's why the NFL is what it is today. It's why you have a franchise like Kansas City that can be a little mini dynasty. It's why a franchise like Seattle can beat the number 2 market like the Rams. It's why, amazingly, that over the last 11 years, the Jets and Giants, the 2 teams in the number 1 market, can have the worst record in the league because there's a premium placed on front office intelligence rather than the amount of money that you spend. And so Mark Walter, to your point, Matthew, would need to be a hero. And he would need to say, okay, I'm in. I want this for the betterment of the league. I have no idea what he wants, but I can say this. Before we ever get to a year from now, and the current CBA expires on December 1st of 2026, before we ever get to player versus owner, before we ever bother taking sides, the owners have to figure out owner versus owner. There has to be revenue sharing before you can ever broach the idea of a salary cap. And I'll be totally on board with the players. I promise you that if the owners don't come to an agreement where there's revenue sharing, then I'll say the same thing as the players. If you aren't going to share the revenue with each other, then why bother trying to share it with us? Because all that will happen if we have a salary cap, a guy like Mark Walter, a guy like Hal Steinbrenner, a guy like Ted Cruz, the owner of the Chicago Cubs, they'll just all put that money that they don't use because of the cap, they'll put that in their pocket, and that's not fair to anybody.
Yeah, I like this from Rico Palazzo. How did that come to be, and why isn't anyone in jail? Well, bankruptcy is different for rich people in this country.
It is. Frank McCourt was the owner of the Billiards, and he and his wife had a major set to, and one of the ways that he was able to maintain the franchise, and this was with Bud Selig that he worked the deal, was that they didn't have to participate in revenue, and they could have never foreseen that this guy, Mark Walter, apparently a pretty good guy, who's sitting on something like $345 billion with Guggenheim Investment. I don't think baseball foresaw what would happen when he got a hold of that franchise. I really believe that they thought, okay, everything's going to be kind of normal here. And then all of a sudden, 3-4 years into their existence, and by the way, they did early on, remember they traded for Adrian Gonzalez and Josh Beckett and those guys, but they weren't spending outrageously. And then they started spending outrageously. And their president, Stan Kasten, said, there might be a time when we have a budget with this franchise, but we haven't seen it on the horizon yet. And they still apparently don't see it on the horizon yet.
Yeah, it's such a weird deal. It's crazy that's how they've essentially been broken by this whole thing, and now we gotta deal with this. Yep. One thing we do.
Way, Samuel Howe asks an interesting question, and I thought you'd pick up on it.
Oh no, Ted Cruz owns the Chicago Cubs. Ridiculous. I was trying to bypass that completely.
Oh, that's so fun.
One last point here, because a lot of the show has been taken up by this discussion. If you're going to be young on purpose. The Cardinals have gone young. Maybe part of this discussion, Randy, is that we might be two of the nothing personal. We just might be two of the least optimistic people about Church being like a legitimate outfield piece for this team. I think that might be part of this discussion, is that neither of us really thinks that he's going to be that player. And I just think we've seen guys like him have big minor careers, and then they're just not Major League Baseball level players. And I don't know if there's a lot of use in giving him 200 at bats this year compared to signing a better outfield piece and maybe winning 5 or 6 more games. Because again, there is a huge contingent. I love that our fan base has gone full on go young, and I don't care how many games you win this year. But that's just not I don't even know if that's the majority of Cardinals fans, considering how it's an older fan base overall, I would argue, considering how spread out it is. And there's a lot of people who watch Cardinals baseball, but maybe don't listen every day to find out, the updates and things like that. So it's harder to get tapped into a team that isn't winning as much. I still think there's a huge amount of Cardinals fans, especially when you talk about the ones who do not want to go to games when it's a bad team, the difference between them winning 70 and 80 games is still a huge material thing to a lot of Cardinals fans. And a lot of those Cardinals fans where that winning difference is a material thing, a lot of them are the ones who are going to buy tickets. And right now, with the TV deal up in the air, that's the only way they're cashing checks right now. And so I wouldn't be surprised if the Cardinals say, hey, I'm not saying over Lars Nootbaar, I'm not saying over Jordan Walker, but in case everything goes tits up at some point this season, it'd be nice to have a real Major League outfielder there who can maybe hit 275 and get you 40 RBI across a few months. That's really the only thought process I have from the Cardinals' perspective. And again, take this to the bank. Chaim Bloom says he wants a right-handed outfielder.
Yeah, and not saying that Church, I don't think we're suggesting that Nathan Church is a bad player. It's just that here he is, 25. Has he played 5 seasons of minor league baseball? We can check this. But he's kind of a 4A guy. He's a really good AAA player, but not quite major. Think of Lucan Baker. Think of a left-handed outfielder, Lucan Baker. That's kind of what I see Nathan Church as.
4 seasons. Again, 4 seasons.
Pardon me?
4 seasons in the minors.
Okay, 4 seasons in the minors. And made it, so that's not bad last year, but clearly a guy who played some college ball and has made it to the majors and did, by the way, perform well last year at AAA. But
Very well. He was crazy for AAA.
Yeah, but there are some guys that are too good for AAA, but not good enough for the majors. And that's what he looked like to me. And maybe it's unfair, 65 plate appearances, 504 OPS, looked kind of overwhelmed, and did have a 943 OPS at Springfield last year, and then went to Memphis and had a 921. But when he got here, it just looked like he had a slow bat, and it looked like he was somewhat overwhelmed. And by the way, that let's see, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Yeah. So last year was his 5th year in organized ball, even though in 21, well, he had 303 plate appearances.
And I'll say it again. It's just, for me, when players make 1-year jumps, I don't think it's ridiculous to wonder where it came from, why it happened. But the fact that he was a 705 OPS player at AA at 23, and then he's a 921 or 943 the next year. I just wonder, is that a guy who, finally found his groove, finally figured out his swing, or is that just the difference between maybe being another year older, facing some people who aren't MLB level? And so that was my only thing with Church. And if he proves me wrong, it'd be great for the Cardinals, but I just think I think like a guy like Kaepernick had a similar, run to him and similar, stats in the jump, and he was a good defender and things like that. And you saw that last year it just didn't work out for him. And so I just don't know if that's the guy you say we can't bring in a Hayes or Andujar. And honestly, maybe it's why you don't bring in a Bader because of the center field factor, but now maybe because of the corner outfield factor, they still do want that right-handed hitter for that reason.
Let me throw one more point here, and it might be an unfair point, but an unfair point about, it's a fair point. One of the problems that Nathan Church has is that he's left-handed. If Nathan Church was right-handed, they'd be much more inclined to give him an opportunity. But because they have Burleson, because they have Gorman, because they have Nootbaar, because they have Scott, and now Crooks is going to be on the major league roster. Apparently, they feel like they have a lot of left-handed hitters that are better than Nathan Church. So
That's a good point.
again, if he was right-handed, don't you think, Matthew, that they'd be giving him and we'd be hearing more about Church? But he's not, so they aren't.
That's a really good point. It is kind of unfortunate that it plays out against him that way. And hey, fairness from Enrico Palazzo and on this one, Crooks and Wynn look overwhelmed too. Wynn in that September run, his in 2023, he had an OPS plus of 28. Jimmy Crooks this past year had an OPS plus of 10. So it's not a bad point. You got me on that one. Also, here's Randy's favorite thing for the day.
Oh, there you go.
Just that is a terrifying resemblance. My God, that's horrible.
That's Tom Ricketts, the owner of the tall one is Tom Ricketts, the owner of the Cubs, and the shorter one is Ted Cruz, the senator from the great state of Texas.
That is a cursed image, if only because it has rings celebrating the Chicago Cubs winning a World Series.
Mason Wynn, by the way, I will grant you that he did look overwhelmed when he came up to the majors at the age of 21. And he didn't have near the experience that Nathan Church has. And the Cardinals knew what they were going to get. When we talk about experience, one of the reasons that he came up in 2023, Mason Wynn did, is because the Cardinals wanted him to get that experience. But if you look at the difference in Mason Wynn's minor league experience compared to Nathan Church, it's pretty dramatic. Wynn came up, had a total of he had 98 games in 2021, and he played low A, high A, and then in 22 he played in double A and A, high A, and also played in the Arizona Fall League. And then he played the entire season in AAA in his third minor league season. So it was his third minor league season at the age of 21 that the Cardinals called him up, and he looked overwhelmed. When you go back to Nathan Church, he, if I'm not mistaken, played some college ball at UC Irvine, played a couple of years, 3 years at UC Irvine. Then he came up to the Cardinals, played at Palm Beach in 22, then 23, 24, 25. So in addition to 3 years of college ball, he had 4 years of minor league ball. So a significant difference, in my opinion, in the 21-year-old Mason Wynn being called up and the 24-year-old at the time, Nathan Church, being called up.
Also, I'm going to throw my hands up. I'm going to change my entire tune. He's doing this all at 23, 24, 25. It's not like Kaperniak when it was 26, 27, 28. Still plenty of time for him to find who he is by 27 years old. Plenty of guys who hit Major League Baseball, not plenty of guys, but there are a handful of guys who hit Major League Baseball finally when they are actually in their pure athletic primes of 27. And so maybe he does that. So maybe these next 2 years are, as Nathan Church, turning himself into a legitimate MLB player. Maybe we've overlooked him, and maybe we overlooked his potential depth for the 2026 Cardinals.
If we have, then the Cardinals have it. And I was just responding there to the comp, which I think is not reasonable, because Mason Wynn was also regarded, by the way, as a future Gold Glove shortstop, which a forecast that turned out to be correct. They weren't looking for a place for Mason Wynn. He was going to be their shortstop of the future. And as we mentioned earlier, Matthew, the Cardinals have identified 4 or 5 left-handed hitters that they like more than Nathan Church. Otherwise, he would have gotten the opportunity ahead of Nootbaar, ahead of Gorman, ahead of Scott, ahead of Burleson, and he didn't. So that's the way the Cardinals have identified things. Hey, before we run, we've got to talk about what's going on with the basketball teams here in the area. And the Billikens, now number 21 in the country in the AP poll after they demolished St. Bonaventure by 25. And Ishan Sharma had 29. Billikens scored 97 points and only had 3 in double figures. What incredible balance they have, and what an incredible job Josh Schertz has done in getting players to buy in. Players always complain about their minutes. I mean, always complain about their minutes, but nobody's complaining here, and they're winning. Illinois beat Purdue, and they move back up into the top 10. Purdue moves down to number 12, and an unbelievable win for Mizzou, getting a buzzer beater to send their game against Oklahoma into OT, and then another buzzer beater to win it in OT from Mark Mitchell, and still not enough scoring for Mizzou, but a really impressive win. And Matthew, You look at Texas A&M, 6-1, leading the SEC. Then you have 3 teams at 5-2, and then you have 4 more teams at 4-3, including Missouri. So the Tigers are right there in the SEC. I don't know how good they are, but right now, after 7 league games, they're right there they're right there with the pack, as it were.
Yeah, it's really hard to order these 3 games because obviously I think if we're just being really honest with ourselves, the game we really need to be talking about is the Illini. They took down the number 4 team in the nation, 88-82 over the Boilermakers. Obviously, I should be saying the former number 4 team in the nation. Purdue lost 2 games this week, so they dropped all the way down to 12. I believe the Fighting Illini are now a top 10 team as of today's rankings. And it was an incredible game because the freshman Keaton Wagler goes off for an incandescent game. He went off. He was incredible in that win over Purdue. He puts together, he goes for 46, 9 for 11 from deep. He outclasses Ishan Sharma by inefficiency by just a little bit. 13 of 17 from the floor, and also had a great day at the charity strike. He sets the freshman record for scoring in a game for the Illini. He was only 4 or 5 points short of the all-time Illinois scoring record, and it's the second highest scoring game ever in an away match against the Purdue Boilermakers, going into Mackey and putting up that kind of game. He dominated Randy. He was in the 240s in 247's composite rankings for the freshman class. He would be at this point right now, because this game has shot him right up into draft contention, not just draft contention, but we're talking about lottery contention. And also we're talking about even maybe top 5 contention for Wagler. He could be only the 3rd player in the last 30 years to go one and done while being outside of the top 150 prospects for his class. It's unbelievable what he's done. The stories about him, because he was at Shawnee Mission North in Kansas City. It's insane that Bill Self in Kansas missed this guy as a prospect. He wasn't getting a lot of focus. For a while there, Minnesota was his only Power 5 offer. Minnesota then fires their coach. The Illini then offer him the story. There's a story on 2247 that's really great about how they're driving in the back roads, I think to Southern Illinois, and he answers his phone. He answers a cell phone call, and I think his dad was driving, and his older brother Landon, who I think plays D2, was also in the car. And he gets a phone call, and because they're in somewhere in Southern Illinois, the call drops out. And they're like, hey, what was that all about? He goes, oh, it was Underwood. They go, Illinois Underwood? He goes, yeah. He goes, well, call him back. He's like, I don't got good service. He just offered me, and I don't want to call him back till we have good service. They're like, what do you mean? He just offered you. And so it's an incredible story. Apparently, he's the first American, because I guess Underwood's done this a few times with some of the European prospects, but he's the first American prospect that Underwood has ever offered without seeing him in person first. Wow. And so Underwood's son then drove down to Southern Illinois, I think, to watch him play games. And they actually got eyes on him. It's unbelievable what he's done. Obviously, the Illini are incredible. Stojakovic, Mirkovic, Ivasic. They might have the best starting 5 in the entire nation with what they're able to do. They got the size, they got the skill, they got obviously just a ton of shooting. The 9 for 11, by the way, for Wagler, set an Illinois record for 9 3-pointers made single game. It's just unbelievable what a kid that no one would have had on their books preseason. Heck, even his teammates didn't really know what to expect from him when they were playing summer and fall ball. And he's just absolutely exploded. He's shot up draft boards. The guy's made himself God knows how many millions in the last 3 or 4 months. An incredible story.
And credit to the Illini and Brad Underwood and his staff too, because as you said, for Self and Mizzou to miss out on a kid in Shawnee, Kansas is, and maybe they didn't miss out on him. Maybe Illinois saw something that nobody else did. So you got to give them credit. And the kid's having a great time right now because the Illini have a chance to be a championship team. So pretty cool. By the way, too much of a overstatement to say that Friday night for SLU game of the year with Dayton and Tom?
No, not too much of an overstatement. I mean, it hurts because Dayton loses a bunch of games. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it might honestly be the very last game of the Billikens season is an away game at George Mason. Mm-hmm. Considering how, I know they don't say they do, but considering how, in my opinion, it's proven that selections that the committee gets a little recency biased. Winning or losing that George Mason game, depending on how every other game goes before that, I mean, that could be, because if that's the difference between them having 2 or 3 losses or them having 3 or 4 losses, I think it completely shifts them from potentially a top 6 seed all the way to like maybe a 10 seed. So maybe it's the George Mason game because the Dayton game's lost so much heft because Dayton hasn't kept up to their side of the bargain. At the same time, I'm sure Arch Barron Cup historians out there on Twitter, if he hears this, he's going to be very mad at me. It is the Arch Barron Cup, pretty big deal. And so considering the run Mizzou slews on, I will say this. Tomorrow night when they face off against GW, they could set the record for the greatest start in SLU program history. No team in SLU program history has ever won 20 of their first 21 games. Never happened. Can SLU do that? And so you take that record, if they do win that game on Tuesday, pile it up with the fact that it's going to be an absolutely packed house on Friday night, maybe it still hits that criteria. Either way, if they keep rolling, it's incredible. And I know the Billikens game just kind of got overshadowed because of what Illinois did and the spectacle of Mizzou, which we touched on but barely went over. But also Ishan Sharma just barely outdone. He went 9 for 12. Keaton Wagler went 9 for 11, so he wins on the efficiency battle. But 9 for 12 from Ishan Sharma was absolutely incredible. I mean, this is a guy who's had a couple double-digit games that already set his career high with 18 points earlier this season for the Billikens, and he erupts for 29 as they dismantled the Bonnies. You can go to my Twitter account, and you can. I did a smash cut of all 9 3-pointers, and I kind of described how each one of them he was able to score, because 9 3-pointers, he did it in about 6 or 7 different ways. Had a couple catch and shoots, but everything else was all these different off-ball motions. He's running through dribble handoffs. He's going off screens. Him and Robbie had this incredible 2-man game. He's back cutting. He's rising when he needs to. Ishan Sharma was amazing, and the Billikens just keep on rolling.
All right. Great stuff as always, and we appreciate everybody who tuned in and was part of today's show, and we always appreciate you guys chatting with us. Always fun to talk some sports. And Matthew, always good to talk to you. Are we going to be back in the building tomorrow? Or are we just going to let that building, we could just we could just do our shows from home from now on, I think.
We got those nice microphones, and we spent a lot of money on them, on those nice cameras and things like that. So I think if we can get in the building maybe later on this week, maybe no need to push it tomorrow. Let me, Wilson here, our erstwhile producer, is in the back. And yes, he does have this. How about this? They did it on my birthday nonetheless. July 23rd, 2024, the St. Louis Billikens offer Keaton Wagler. So interesting here. So the teams that had offered him at that point was UMKC, Utah Rio Grande, FIU, Abilene Christian, Northern Colorado, Illinois Chicago, Murray State, Oral Roberts, Southern Illinois. That's why he was on the drive. DePaul, Colorado State, bam. St. Louis offers him on July 23rd, 2024. Wow. Then Tulsa. He visits Murray State. He visits the Salukis. He offers by Minnesota, who was his first real commit. And then Illinois offers him the same day as Minnesota. Wichita State gets in the business. And then eventually in September, he officially visits the Fighting Illini and commits to them 5 days later. How about that? Good job by Wilson checking that one out. The Billikens apparently were in on Keaton Wagler. I mean, bless America if they could have gotten him, Randy.
And that was this staff too. By July of 24, this staff was in place. It wasn't the Travis Ford staff. So
great point.
Pretty good.
Wow, that's I got to get to Billikens Twitter and get that news out there. That's absolutely incredible. Yeah, all 3 teams are lighting it up. Big games this week for all of them as well. Of course, the Illini are now in the top 10, so every game for them is absolutely a huge deal. They're at this point now fighting for potential number 1 seed status. That's going to be huge.
All right. Great job, sir. Thank you. And thanks to everybody. And we will see you next time. Of course, we're presented by DraftKings, where the crown is yours here at STL Sports Central.